This is video number 3 in the Awakening to Oneness series. Video number 1 was entitled An Introduction to Non-Duality. Video number 2 was entitled The Illusion of the Separate Self. I'll put links to both of those above here if you want to check those out before continuing with this video. In this video, we're going to try and reconcile various concepts and terms that are used in various spiritual teachings with non-duality. I think you'll be very surprised at how we can hold conceptual inconsistencies within ourselves. I know I was certainly surprised by that. So stay tuned and I'll tell you more. Hi, my name is Michael Doyle. Welcome to the channel. As I mentioned, we use various terms, or there are various concepts within spiritual circles that we use almost in our everyday common language. However, many of them are inconsistent and incompatible with non-duality. Ken Wapnick, who worked alongside Helen Schucman, who was the scribe for A Course in Miracles, and he was the editor of the first edition, and then he went on to found the Foundation for Inner Peace that distributes A Course in Miracles. He has said that in various places that you can't get too far away from the metaphysics of the Course before you're off track. What he means by that is there's no compromise when it comes to non-duality. The concept of duality and non-duality do not coexist. If there is a God and all is one with God, then you can't have a physical world and a physical body, and vice versa. If you believe in a physical world and a physical body, then there is no God. I'm going to introduce some of these concepts and terms that we use and see how they reconcile or not with non-duality. And the first of these is spiritual path or spiritual journey. I know over the years I've said that probably about 1,000 times, and usually it's when you're trying to tell somebody what you're about or what you're into. However, when you really think about it, the term is actually not compatible with non-duality, because in non-duality, we are already at one with God. There is no separation. So therefore, there's nowhere to go. To say we're on a spiritual path or a spiritual journey means that we're going somewhere and progressing over time. Of course, it's innocent to say that we're on a spiritual journey or a spiritual path. However, we just want to be aware of when we're being inconsistent if we're truly dedicated to living non-duality. The second of these terms is an extremely popular one, especially on YouTube, and that's the law of attraction. I have to confess, I was a student of the teachings of Abraham for a very long time and really believed in the law of attraction. However, this is one of the conceptual inconsistencies that I have since learned, and if I want to be dedicated to non-duality, I really have to take a look at the law of attraction, and here's why. The way the law of attraction is taught and received by most people is that I have a vibration, and whatever that vibration happens to be, the universe is going to match that and put something in my external reality. Well, that's totally duality, right? It says I have a separate vibration, separate from everybody else's vibration, and the universe, which is separate from me, is going to produce this thing outside of me in the outside world. So you can see where the inconsistency is coming from, right? When Abraham Hicks and Abraham, the entity channeled through Esther Hicks, first introduced the work, they called it the law of deliberate creation, not the law of attraction. People just kept coming back to calling it the law of attraction, so they let it go and they went along with law of attraction. As Abraham always refers and says, once you ask for something, it's in vibrational escrow. And what they mean by that is, within the quantum structure, we have multiple realities that we have access to at the very same time. An infinite number this way and an infinite number that way. And depending on what our, as Abraham calls it, your point of attraction is, you're not aware that you're doing this, but you're actually shifting between timelines. And the better you feel and the more you're in alignment with source energy, the higher you are in your vibration, the more you're moving up in this direction. And the lower you feel, if you're feeling depressed or in grief, you're moving down into these timelines, right? When you hold, for example, the vibration of a vehicle that you want, total appreciation for it, first of all, you can't have the thought unless it's in one of your timelines. So that's why Abraham says, ask, it's answered, because you couldn't have, it's impossible for you to ask for it if it isn't already in one of your timelines. And so what you're doing is you're lining up, like with a radio station, you're lining up with that particular timeline. And then once you're lined up with that timeline, there it is, right? But it's all still within the illusion. So none of it is real. There is no outside world. There is no universe. There are no timelines. One of the things that people have a hard time wrapping their head around is that in A Course in Miracles, it says that creation happened in a flash. In other words, everything was created in a flash and it was over right away. All these timelines and all these possibilities, we are just playing out the illusion of time and space. But they have all been over a long time ago. When we're creating our reality, we're not creating anything. We're just lining up with a timeline that has what it is that we say that we want. So it's all an illusion. It's totally incompatible with non-duality. Within non-duality, we are one with God, and as God, we are totally abundant. And to the extent that we live in that space and live in that as our identity, then what will show up will be pleasing to us. As A Course in Miracles says, the happy dream. We will see the happy dream, but it's still a dream, right? So we don't invest our identity in it or our feelings and emotions into it as something that's real. The next concept I want to talk about is that of ascension. A lot of, especially on YouTube, a lot of channelers and psychics are talking about how we are ascending. We are raising our vibration, and that everyone on the planet is raising their vibration, some of us more than others. And what that implies is that we're shifting into a higher density, like moving from a third dimensional consciousness to a fifth dimensional consciousness. But the whole concept of ascension is part of the illusion because it implies movement, change, and progress. With non-duality, we're already one with God, so there's nowhere to go. We may have an experience, just like we have feelings and emotions or a body. We experience those things, but they are not real. They are not the truth of who we are. And the same thing, we may use ascension to describe feeling a heightened state of awareness. And we may experience an even higher state of awareness another day. But there really wasn't any movement. We were always totally at one and completely aware, and we are just having an experience of realizing it. Even dimensions and energy and frequencies are all part of the illusion. You can use the term if you want to describe where you're at or an experience that you're having, but to make ascension real and to tell everybody else about ascension is totally incompatible with non-duality, if that is what you're committed to and want to be living. The next concept that I'll talk about follows naturally from ascension, and that's planetary ascension. Again, you see psychics and extraterrestrials channeling information about how the planet is ascending as well. It's a consciousness and it's ascending. And some even go as far as to say that planet Earth is splitting into two Earths. And they're overlapping right now, and they will for about 40 years, and that those who are in a fifth dimensional consciousness or higher are going to go to one Earth, the new Earth, and those who have not raised their consciousness are going to stay on current Earth. Sorry to say, but that's a bunch of bull poo-poo, all right? Here's why. In the quantum structure, which is all the illusion, where all of the illusion exists, each apparent separate self, like me and like you, whatever we are observing is a projection of our consciousness. It's all us. So what Earth are we talking about? My Earth? Your Earth? The other person's Earth? There aren't one Earth or two Earths. There's 8 billion Earths. Let me give an analogy to explain it this way. In the last video, I referred to the fact that I had gone to an IMAX theater and watched a production called Blue Planet, where they showed images from all kinds of angles of planet Earth from the Hubble telescope. At the same time that I was watching those images through the projector locally, projectors all around the world were also showing that IMAX presentation on planet Earth. They were projecting a different Earth. So that's the way it is with us as well. Everything we see is us projecting it out through our consciousness. It looks like we're perceiving, but all we're seeing is a reflection of what we have put out there. There isn't one collective physical world evolving, but rather an individualized experience of a so-called planet that reflects the perceiver's level of awareness. Planetary ascension is just a shift in the dream and not an actual transformation of some independent existing world. The very idea of a collective planetary shift assumes a shared stable world rather than individual projections of mind. All right, let's get even more controversial. Let's take a look at the concept of ascended masters, Jesus, Lord Metatron, and that whole concept, that whole scenario. Well, from a totally non-dual perspective, being at one with God, nothing else ever happened. There was no separation, there is no time, there is no evolution of beings. We're all one with God. So what are they all about? Well, they're part of the illusion, and like everything else, they appear to have form, they appear to have a hierarchy. I've even seen charts and graphs that show where they all lay out in terms of the spiritual hierarchy, as it's called, and they don't have individual identities. We're all one. Any illusion of separation, even with the ascended masters and Jesus, is an illusion. It never happened. How we can look at them is as symbols or aspects of the dream that serve a purpose in guiding those especially who are still believing in separation, and they are not at the level of awareness of non-duality and accepting that as the reality. Now, Jesus, for example, represents the memory of our true nature and can be seen as a symbol of the awakened mind within the dream. Metatron, the Ascended Masters, and other figures can be understood in a similar way as facets of the dream that reflect a higher level of awareness within it. For those who are still navigating the illusion, these figures can serve as helpful stepping stones, reflections of the mind's willingness to awaken. In a sense, they are us, and they have often told us that. They are us in different symbolic roles within the illusion, just as every figure in the dream is ultimately a reflection of the dreamer. That naturally brings us to, which has already been mentioned, 5D consciousness. I know I've said, and I've even done videos where I've talked about living more from a 5D consciousness, which implies an awareness or a level, falsely implies a level where we come from a state of unity and love and higher awareness, and where duality begins to dissolve. People who say they have ascended to the 5D are said to experience greater sense of peace and synchronicities and a sense of oneness with all of life. Any higher consciousness or use of the term we're going from a 3D consciousness to a 5D consciousness implies that there's progress, movement, and change, again, which means it's part of the illusion. Because why? There's nowhere to go. We don't need to travel anywhere to experience our oneness with God. We only need to remember that that's who we are and where we are, and to release any false perceptions and beliefs that we may have that we're not there. True awakening isn't about moving into a higher state. It's about acknowledging that we're already there and there's nowhere to go. Just like your body, it may be an experience that you're having, but it's only an experience of higher awareness that you always had and was always available to you. You didn't all of a sudden do a bunch of work that got you there. It's just you're remembering more of the awareness that you already are. Another fun concept to play with is that of starseeds. I know for a long time I identified myself as a starseed from Orion. And for me, there was a sense of comfort in that, because it explained to me a lot of the reasons why I thought differently than other people and why I was so different. Well, if my soul or my essence or my DNA comes from another planet, then it helps give me a sense of comfort and relief. But again, that's all part of the illusion. There are no past origins. There are no cosmic hierarchies. There are no souls traveling from one star system to this star system and to this planet. That's all within the illusion. It makes for a nice storyline, but it isn't really happening. Again, all that can come from that is the realization that you are already one with God. Where do you need to go? Why would you need to go from one star system to another? You're already one with God. And so we can get distracted by these storylines and extraterrestrials and planets and all that. And that's all they are, is they keep us from understanding and waking up to the truth of who we really are. From a strictly non-dual perspective, any distinctions or perspectives of Earth versus the Pleiades, human versus starseed, are just part of the illusion of separation. And of course, the ego wants us to believe in these because separation is its whole identity. Any storyline that it can sell you that tells you that you're separate and different from everybody else is what they want, is what it wants, right? Because its survival depends on that. If you don't think you're separate from everybody else, in fact, the whole experience of waking up to the truth of who you are is about dropping the false belief of the I, that you exist as an I. True awakening dissolves all constructs, revealing that no one was ever from anywhere, because in truth there is nowhere to go, only the infinite, timeless reality of God. Now, a term that you may have heard is soul transcendence. This term is associated with a group out of California who have been around for over 50 years, called the Church for the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, or MSIA is more commonly what they go by. That term is pretty specific to them. What that term assumes is that we all have individual souls, and that we're traveling into higher and higher realms and higher planes until ultimately we merge with God. And from a non-dual perspective, of course, none of that can be accurate. It's all part of the illusion. And I've even seen their charts and graphs of the planes that the soul travels through, and there are no individual souls. That, again, is just another idea of separation that doesn't exist. There is no journey or hierarchy to move through so that one day you will be united with God. You are already united with God. For personal reasons that I won't go into, I spent quite a bit of time over the past few months taking a look at this organization. And by the way, they have people, they call them subscribers, throughout the world. After taking a look at them and realizing that their teaching was completely dualistic, I realized that, you know what? There is no possible way that any of these believers will ever reach the state of oneness with God that they aspire to. Now, I'm not implying anything about these people in terms of, I don't think they're a cult. They're very nice people. They're very well-meaning people. They think they're right, just like most groups do. A lot of groups, the reason why people join them and stay with them has more to do with the community aspect than really taking a look at the beliefs. But soul transcendence, especially introduced 55 years ago or whenever it was really radical, and it could make a lot of sense until you stack it up against non-duality and you realize, no, it's their whole belief system is a totally dualistic belief system. I think that they can never reach the goal that they aspire to for two reasons. Ken Wapnick, as I say, who has written a series of books called Journey Through A Course in Miracles, where he goes through all of the lessons and does a commentary on them all. He said at some point, I tried to find the exact quote, he said that Jesus said that as long as you believe you have a physical body and that the earth is real, you can never have a direct experience of oneness with God. You can only have an abstract experience. What that means is, just like the example I gave a couple of videos ago, you could know everything there is to know about oranges. However, if you've never tasted one, then your experience of oranges is only an abstract one. The second reason why I don't believe that they can ever reach their desired goal has to do with the quantum structure. The quantum structure is just infinite possibility. We, by the thoughts and feelings that we think, are constantly pulsing our vibration, if you will, frequency into the quantum structure. And that's how the reality that we think that we see is created, is that energy flows through us and is projected out onto the screen. And it matches, it almost sounds like law of attraction, but there's some distinctions. It matches what it is that you have sent out into the quantum structure. And we're doing it all the time. If I'm putting out into the quantum structure all the time as someone within this belief system, I'm a human being, I'm on a journey and I'm on a path, and someday I'm going to arrive at this state of oneness with God, then the only thing that can be created in my perceived reality is belief that I'm a human being, continuous journey, continuous traveling to get to somewhere someday, but that someday that bar keeps being moved every day that we continue to put that out into the field. Whereas with non-duality, we're saying we are at one with God and we're putting that into the field. The only thing that could be mirrored back to us is experiences, ever-growing experiences of our oneness with God. Peace, joy, freedom. Moving on then to believers of non-duality. There is a certain faction or circle of non-duality believers and teachers who commonly use the term for no apparent reason. In concept, I agree with them, but that term I completely disagree with. Here's why. So in concept, when somebody uses that term for no apparent reason, what they're saying is something has appeared in my perception, and because there's no cause and effect, no creation within the illusion, there's the illusion of creation and there's the illusion of cause and effect, but since there really isn't any, then anything that appears in my perception has done so for no apparent reason. I agree with the no cause and effect and the no creation within the illusion. But to me, the use of the term for no apparent reason abdicates responsibility for what does show up in your perception. So what do I mean by that? Going back again to quantum theory and quantum structure. Depending on my feelings and emotions and thoughts that are being emanated into the quantum field, that is going to determine what shows up. To the extent that I am thinking high vibrating thoughts and feelings and continuously putting them out into the field, then what is going to show up in my perception is completely different than if I was depressed or in grief or pessimistic, negative. The apparent reason that you're observing what you're observing has to do with your point of attraction or point of creation and the timeline that you happen to be in. It sounds like I'm creating my reality when I say that. No, creation was over a long time ago. All I'm doing is lining up with different versions of timelines that have been over a long time ago. I'm not creating anything. I'm simply shifting timelines which are all over and all part of the illusion anyway. So that brings me to the term then that we've heard the term we create our own reality. Well, based on what I've just said, what you can see is no, we don't create our own reality. We select our own reality, but I mean, it's a distinction without a difference because an illusion is an illusion. So whether it's an illusion that we're creating our reality or selecting our reality, it's still an illusion. In summary then, we can say that these teachings and these concepts that I've talked about are just another bridge for people at different levels of understanding. And a lot of the reasons why teachers and channels and extraterrestrials and psychics use those terms is because they're hitting people where they're at, right? So that it's easier for them to understand. But if you have committed to and you believe that non-duality is for you, then you really need to start to take a look at whether you're holding any of these conceptual inconsistencies, because it will only make you have an even greater awareness and experience of your oneness with God when you resolve those conceptual inconsistencies. As long as you believe in levels and dimensions and ascension or evolving souls, you're reinforcing the very illusion that keeps you bound. And the whole idea behind waking up to the truth of you, who you are, is to free yourself from all of the beliefs and places where you've placed and invested your identity. If we're just starting on our spiritual path and we come across ascension, it can sound really expansive and enlightened and spiritual, but they still operate within a framework of separation, of time, and of personal identity, meaning they'll always generate new questions, new things to attain, new levels to try and reach, and new forms of suffering, because that's what the ego is all about, right? Non-duality offers the only true and permanent freedom, while all other frameworks, bridges, and hierarchical spiritual models keep you trapped in the illusion of seeking. If you want to get off that treadmill of watching hundreds of videos and reading dozens of books and attending all kinds of classes, non-duality will give you that freedom, because everything else is just an illusion to try and convince you that you're getting somewhere when you're really not. You're only reinforcing the very thing that you're trying to get away from. Non-duality, fully embraced, ends the search. It dissolves the illusion at its root, revealing that you've never been separate, never lacked anything, and never needed to evolve. Instead of endlessly refining the dream, you wake up from it. In the next video, we're going to talk about some practical ways of practicing non-duality. Things that you can do to help wake up to non-duality to a greater an extent and release the false beliefs and perceptions and illusions of separation. I've asked in the previous videos, if you have any questions about non-duality, to please submit them to the email address in the description box below. I have yet to receive any, but I'm going to invite you one more time, and if I don't get any questions this time, then I've been promising that the last video I would do in this series is to answer questions on non-duality, but if I don't get any, then there won't be that last video. I hope you will stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some value out of it. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.